All right, welcome everyone to our December 18th North Middlesex Council meeting. This time I'll call the meeting to order. It's a privilege once again it's that time of year where long service recognition for the fire department. And we have three recipients here tonight. We have one attending, two have been unable to attend with us tonight. But the first one is Rob Whitmore, has 40 years of experience. Frank Reum is celebrating 25 years. And Bob Payne, 35 years. Congratulations. If, if we can get you to come up to the front, Bob, and we'll present that to him. And Scott, are you coming up? Is all coming up? So.
I'm really close together. Because you don't want me to.
Can we get counsel to stand up?
I'm gonna shove that out of the way for the time being. How much is it? Come on, hop along. That's Brian's chair, bring it back.
We just gonna sit here. This is long.
Guy in the middle. It's only lift you up there.
Recognize that not only
Thank you, gentlemen. Once again, congratulations to all of those recipients here tonight. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. I do have one to share, and that is with planning item number 6, the OPA 15 and 39T NM 2401 draft plan for Nairn Trails. I declare conflict on that, and the deputy mayor will chair that. So at this time, minutes of the previous meeting, any errors, omissions, or business arising? Seeing none, motion to accept. Councillor Daigle, Councillor Nerda, all in favor? Carried, thank you. And delegations. We have a Soluble Bayfield coming up, George, and I have Davin coming up. Okay. We promised Davin we wouldn't give him a hard time, but you might get a hard time. Would is that on? Yeah, you might want to have this sitting down. I'm just kidding. I'm just. No. All right, welcome. Welcome.
there you go. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. I appreciate you guys taking time on your agenda tonight, and I hope you find my presentation interesting. Most people don't find it that interesting when engineers talk, so I will try to keep it as brief as I can. Next slide. Oh, yeah, perfect. As you see there, I'm going to provide a brief overview of the Park Hill Dam, some of the relevant history and how it fits within the broader ABCA structures program and the work of the Conservation Authority. Next slide, please. So the Park Hill Dam, like I said, is part of the larger suite of hazard management programs. In previous decades, especially the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and a little bit in the 90s. This was the kind of state-of-the-art approach to flood control. There's now a lot less provincial funding available for these kinds of large capital projects, and philosophy in this area has moved away from structures and infrastructure to more cost-effective means of flood control. But of course, we have this infrastructure in flood-prone areas, and their role in controlling flooding and erosion through engineering means is still effective, even if it isn't necessarily cost-effective for new structures. And our staff undertake the inspection, operation, and maintenance of the Parkhill Dam and the 19 other structures under that program. Next slide, please. Thank you. So as we look more in depth at the structure, I do really encourage the council to maintain a broader, imagine the headwaters and the whole watershed area in your mind that contributes to the flow that control structures like the Parkhill Dam control. At the time of construction, like I said, it was a state-of-the-art installation. But now that we have a better understanding of these structures, we also have to think about the fact that they have unintended consequences. They'll block fish passage, increased water temperature, which can impact sensitive species. Erosion protection measures can block the travel of some species that move from water to land or land to water as part of their life cycle. But these new approaches of managing water in the landscape also reduces impacts to structures like the Parkhill Dam, which extends the service life, and it reduces the maintenance costs that we have to undertake as the agency managing it. Next slide, please. Thank you. So much of the 19 structures we manage and operate, like the Exeter and Morrison dams, the Sauble Cut, those were created for other water management purposes, not for flood control. But the Parkhill Dam is the one structure designed and that we still currently operate for flood control. It does that all the time under a passive mode of operation, and we also, during some events, actively operate the dam structure. Next slide, please. So the Klondike Market Garden and Grain Growing area, protecting that area was really the inception, not just of the Parkhill Dam, but of the Sauble Bayfield Conservation Authority in 1949, where the dam wasn't built until 1969. In addition to protecting that area, it reduced spring flooding, and it protects crops from summer storms. It's also capable of augmenting low flow during summer months. The flows it detains come from about a third of the watershed of the Parkhill Creek, which, as I'm sure council knows, outlets in Grand Bend. Sure. And the structure itself has three distinct types of outlets for the three types of operation. Like I said, it augments summer flows, and that's done through what we call the low flow inlet, which is the smallest outlet from the dam. There's also a side inlet, which is the main control for the levels in the reservoir. So it at a certain elevation, once the reservoir levels go above, it's also automatically discharged through the side inlet without any actions from staff or operators. And then we have two large gates, which are operated manually by a BCA staff based on reservoir levels when they either get high or rising at a high rate, which is all determined by the design manual, the original one for the dam. So we still operate it effectively the same way as it was designed in the 60s. Next slide, please. So this is the 1/3 of the Parkhill Creek watershed outlined in black on the slide here that you can see. That includes all the land that's drained through it, which is the watershed for the reservoir. I'll just highlight, if you click, there's a couple key features here on this map, and that location is the Cameron Gillies diversion, which is also an integral part of flood protection here. So and I'll get into that a bit later, but it diverts flows that would go through downtown Parkhill into the reservoir. And then I'll just note, if you click again, that's the upstream gauge station, which gives us the flows into the reservoir. The next spot is, that's where the control structure is, where we have a gauge both for the level of the reservoir and the outflows. And there's a third station you see at that red dot, which is the part of the Park Hill Creek that's uncontrolled. We have a gauge station there as well. Next slide, please. So this graph is the flows at those 3 gauge stations from the previous slide during a large rain event in July. So you can see the black line there shows the uncontrolled flow into the reservoir, and the orange line is the uncontrolled flow on the lower Park Hill Creek. And so the dotted line is the flow out of the reservoir. So that really gives you an idea. You know, when you compare those flows into the reservoir and flows out, you have the same amount of water, that effectively the area under these lines, if we zoomed out enough, would be the same over a long enough period of time, but we don't see, nearly as high a peak in the reservoir level. It actually only really starts to come up once the flow into the reservoir the flows out of the reservoir starts to come up once the flow into the reservoir and this rain event flows have effectively ended for areas downstream as well. Next slide, please. So as I alluded to earlier, the Cameron Gillies diversion channel is another important flood feature, and the Park Hill Dam's integral to its operation. So it doesn't detain flows, but it diverts the largest flows that would go through the town of Park Hill. If you would click one more time, right through that area highlighted in green. It was completed in 1964. And if you look at the photos of my colleague, who's nice enough to pose for scale, the different size of culverts effectively give you an idea of what happens. So those 2 smaller culverts on the bottom right show the maximum amount of flow that's allowed basically to continue into the town of Park Hill. Anything beyond that is diverted to the right side of the screen into the diversion channel. And those culverts that are taller than, again, my great colleague Jeff, that shows you how much flow the diversion channel is designed to put into the Park Hill Reservoir. Next slide, please. So yeah, that shows just where the town of Park Hill is and the reservoir on that map. Okay. So the ultimately all of the work that ABCA does in stewardship, wetland protection, creation, stormwater management, planning review, tree planting, cover crop work, anything that increases infiltration, keeps water on the landscape, reduces development in headwater areas, contributes, it is important work, and it contributes not just to reducing the need for large and expensive infrastructure like the Park Hill Dam, but it reduces the maintenance cost on the existing infrastructure that we inspect and maintain. The brief time that which can but sometimes only be 24 hours that water is kept on the landscape by natural features also reduces erosion. I'm going to steal something from our Healthy Watersheds department. They've got a great hierarchy for effectiveness. It's save, seed, and steward. Save existing natural areas, seed more natural areas, and steward the land. And my colleagues and sometimes myself that do stormwater management review under ABCA's policies, also look at having pre and post construction flows be the same. All of these approaches we do find are more cost effective than large scale infrastructure like this, but most importantly, for the infrastructure that we do have, it reduces the maintenance cost to them. And a couple more photos will show up if you click. And there's, like I said, a lot of clicking on this slide, sorry, just to bring some bullets up. I thought I would be at the wheel, so apologies. But this is the last slide of my presentation. Does anyone have any questions?
Questions from council? Councilor Keough.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. Daniel, just looking at the pictures here, brings a couple questions to mind. What is the life expectancy of a 55-year-old dam anyhow?
It depends on the infrastructure and the upkeep. There there'd be an initial design life, but you can, continue to manage it. We do regular safety inspections on the dam, and the last one was done 5 years ago. It didn't suggest that it was near end of life or required anything other than some regular maintenance and upkeep, and scored it actually as low risk.
I'm looking at this picture of the large culverts. We have
Mhm.
several of those here in our municipality, and we are starting to replace them. And they are quite expensive. Is this Cameron Gillies one? Is that a cost share event, the day that has to be replaced? I'm just
The
thinking about
Yeah.
you had mentioned you're not you're receiving less funding from governments above. Are you looking for more support from governments below?
Might defer to Davin on
Oh.
questions about the cost sharing agreement and that
Okay.
structuring, because they don't trust me with the money at the ABCA.
Okay.
Okay,
You wanna-
Counselor Irwin and then Counselor Daigle.
Thank you, your worship, and through you, and thank you for your presentation. I enjoyed that. I have a couple of questions just to clarify the purpose of the dam, if you don't mind.
Mhm.
I think slide 5, you talked about protecting grain growing areas and reducing spring flooding, but I didn't hear exactly where those grain growing areas were. Did you mention that? I did.
Yeah, but mostly in the like the Thetford Klondike area, a lot of the historic areas that
So
were.
Thetford.
Yeah.
Lambton Shores.
I mean, both, really anywhere downstream of the structure is protected by it
Okay,
because of the nature of retaining the water.
right.
And I don't have a map of the specific areas that were looked at in the design of it. It's something
Okay.
we could report back to council if.
No, that's
Council wants
helpful.
that.
And one more, if I may, on the same vein, on slide 7, you had a map showing upstream of the dam and all the water flows that goes into the dam area that the dam controls, but I didn't see the downstream benefactors. I didn't see that part of the watershed that the dam
Yeah,
tend to.
I mean, we've got the whole watershed on the last slide
Right.
if you're able to bring
Okay.
that up again.
I saw the upstream
Mhm.
and I saw that, but I didn't see the
Yeah.
downstream, exactly who else
You could-
benefit from the dam.
You could see
being
that there, or I mean, it's evident as well on slide 7. I mean, anyone downstream of the dam benefits, of course, as the further downstream you get, the more confluence of other channels there are,
Right,
which are, which have uncontrolled flows. So that, not that there's no benefit, but there's
Okay.
diminishing returns the further downstream you are as well.
of course,
Yeah.
and I'm just trying to make out exactly where that geography is, downstream here. So I guess it goes into, like you said, Thetford, Lambton Shores, and so forth,
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
all the
Lake.
way to Grand Bend.
all the way to Grand Bend.
Yeah,
Okay,
right. The cut that kind of created the Grand Bend Harbor and separates the Park Hill Creek from it, originally being the Asable.
well, that all happened at
two
the same
cuts.
time, right? The dam,
Oh, no, those cuts were long
long, yeah.
before the dam. Yeah.
Thank you.
Counselor Daigle.
Thank you. I'm thinking of Springbank Park Dam in the Thames upper, I think it's upper or lower, I'm not sure which one of the Thameses it's in. All of a sudden it's operating without it. And you said they are no longer building dams. Is there a way of changing this so that it's not a dam?
The short answer would be yes, it's possible, but there's also significant cost to dam decommissioning as well.
But that's carried by everybody that's in the watershed, is it not?
I imagine, again,
I see a hand up behind you. The answer will come later.
I think we can get that answer by the sound from Devin later.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. And that, because then otherwise you can't hear you without the microphone. Okay. Another question, or is that? Okay. No other questions? Okay, well, okay, I do have a couple, and that is, so the diversion channel is operating a little differently than I was led to believe, because I was under the impression that we weren't using the diversion channel. Wasn't going, that it was all coming through here. That's good to know that the diversion channel is being used.
Yes.
My other question was, when you're monitoring this, is there any way to monitor this off-site, or do you just have to be on-site to do all the monitoring?
Note for monitoring, Mayor Ropp, we can do all of that offsite from our offices or
Okay.
from effectively anywhere with a computer. I can look, our staff can look and see what the levels are and what the flows are at those other stations as well. Now, to actually operate the gates, we do need staff on
Yeah.
site.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, go ahead. Councilor Canales.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. I have a couple questions for you, Devin, and you may be able to answer, you may not, okay? With the overflow, because I remember in the spring, we talked about that a little bit when there was some concern about the flooding happening downstream, down around the Hague Road area. And I asked you because there was some concern that the water was being released from the dam, but I think if I recall correctly, you said that there's an overflow gate there that is not controlled. Is that true?
Yeah, that is true. There's like the structure, like I said, has a low flow valve that we can use to augment flows. We have the automatic side inlet, which is what I think you mean when you say overflow gate, that only operates once the reservoir is at a certain level. And then again, if the flows into the reservoir exceed what the side inlet can manage, then we have the gates that we release further flows from. But the side inlet operates, in storms and on kind of, I'm sure it's likely operating today.
So I have one more question for you, and
Mhm.
I'm serious about it. Some people may not think I am, but I am. And I don't know if I need to direct the question to you or to some of your colleagues at the back there, but mosquitoes are a huge problem for us here in Park Hill. We spray them and you breed them. How can you help us control mosquitoes in Park Hill?
There may be other ways that we do monitor and have in the past, like monitored additional locations of water levels on a steady basis to look at this long and ongoing problem with mosquitoes. The shortest answer I can give, if it's not already too late, is that the dam is detaining water and holding it back. Without the dam there, those areas downstream of the dam that, I think are where I'm not a mosquito expert by any means, other than getting bitten. But those areas downstream on the dam, would have more water in them more frequently without the dam being there.
But that's currently identified as a wetland, is it? The area west of the dam?
I don't have our mapping in front of us, but I believe
And a
that's
wetland
correct.
is where mosquitoes typically breed, is it not so?
I think they can breed in any standing water. And again, I'm an engineer.
Okay.
Living things, not,
Okay.
you just have to talk to an engineer at a Christmas party this season to know that living things aren't
Oh,
their
that's tomorrow
specialty.
night, right? Okay. we'll
Yeah,
do that. Okay.
yeah, tomorrow night. You can
Introduce
see
me.
how awkward I am. But in a wetland, there are predator species and things that will eat mosquitoes that might not be true in your, standing water you might find in your backyard full of mosquito larvae. Whether that's the case in the town of Park Hill, maybe the amount of mosquitoes bears that evidence out.
Well, thank you.
No problem, Councilor.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Hodgins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question, is maybe on a little on the strange side too, but we have had what we call catastrophic major rainstorms, just kind of like the snowstorm we had the other day there. Where a lot of water comes in. I have seen other ones, St. Mary's was one, different other ones where trash comes down. Have we ever had to clean out logs, brush from the dam? To prevent it, the buildup. I never heard that we've ever had to, but I'm wondering, I've even seen as many times like round bales are got caught and they get floating down the river and get caught up there. Have we ever had to clean that out?
Yes, sir. We have to do it all the time. Is the easy answer. We've got our field services staff inspect the dam regularly, and usually part of that inspection involves getting a big rake. The side inlet's got a grate on it that most of this debris gets hung up on,
Yeah.
and we have to clear that out and move that stuff out of a spot that it's going to wash right back into the reservoir and be a problem, at the next inspection in a week or two.
Okay. Any other questions at this time? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you very
Thank
much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I don't know, we got off pretty easy, Dave, and I'm not feeling good for you. Welcome. Welcome. Yep. Oh,
It's live now.
Yep.
Okay. Perfect. So the lower here, D. Okay. So thank you, Mayor Rob, Council, for the invitation to come here and present tonight. Also additional thanks to to Adrian, who's our counselor on our board of directors for representing North Middlesex. And also congrats again to Mayor Ropp for the being elected warden last week. So with that, I guess what we'll start into here is the actual, I want to talk a little bit about the budget stuff first before we get back into the Park Hill Dam, because I think some of the things that are going to come up in the budget part really relate back to that special benefit of the reservoir itself. So we'll talk about that later and hopefully hit some of those questions that that came out earlier. In the presentation, slide 1, if we can pull it up here, is the looking at the overall levy, but I want to talk about breaking it down first and how we got to these numbers. In preparing for the 2025 budget, one of the first things that we do is we look at a 5-year forecast and try to pick out projects that we know are important. And we look at that to kind of guide us to what projects we might be looking for and how that might hit on the operations levy for that year. So when staff first put the budget together, the number we were actually looking at initially was over 14%. And we know that's not palatable. So we have to look at, okay, what can we put off, keep on the dockets and you know, look at those projects in the future. What we were able to do when we had our special our budget meeting information session in October was come back to the board with a proposal of 5.31% for the 2025 budget. So that's what we presented with. The direction from the board of directors at the time was to come back with a few options. Those options were to look at a 5% levy increase, a 4%, and a 3.5%. So what we did is we went away and we had our budget meeting or board meeting 2 weeks later, brought the budget back with a proposed 3.93%. And what I can do by going through the sheet here now is to actually show you, it's just the other PDF, is to show the numbers I guess we're looking at and what that means on the actual levy for the watershed and also more particular North Middlesex. So, find it there. All right, perfect. Yeah, it should be the next page or the right after that. Yeah, that's the table there. That's gonna be tough to read. I apologize. Oh, you can, okay, perfect. All right. You can kind of see there, and it's not highlighted there, but North Middlesex is about 2/3 of the way down. And then I'll talk about all the numbers that are on there anyways to go through those. Before getting into some of the classic levy items, I want to take a minute to introduce what we're calling the capital levy. This was something that the Conservation Authorities Act under Ontario Regulation 686/21, we were required to have a capital levy in place by the end of 2024. And really for us, it was an opportunity to introduce a more complete capital asset management plan, planning better for the future. That was approved by the board of directors in July of this year. And what we were looking at together that was really, it's a slow increase. We know the number we want to get to, but you want to do it phase it in over a period of 10 years. So what we were asking was look at a $20,000 capital levy for this year and increase that by $20,000 every year going forward for the next 10 years to get to the number that we need to be at. What that capital levy really represents on our overall budget is a 1.39% increase. Okay. Again, that being new to this year. Just to give an idea of what the overall capital assets are for the Assault Bay Conservation Authority, it's about 28 million. And 20 of that is for the flood and erosion control structures, one of which was the Park Hill Dam that Daniel presented on. So also within that, for the center section there's 3 columns. There's category 1 projects, and category 3. Those are the MOUs that North Middlesex would have signed one at the end of 2023. That's a 5-year agreement that's in place for the category 3 services. If we look at the combined between the category 1, the category 1 projects and the category 3, what we see as an overall operating levy increase from 2024 to 2025 as proposed for North Middlesex is a 1.35%. Included in that is also, we look at staff wages where we have a pay grade adjustment this year of 2.5%. That's to keep up with the cost of living. There's also now if we add in the proposed combined levy, the capital and the operating, North Middlesex sees an increase of a total of 2.72% for 2025. Where these values come from, I'll talk about the current value assessment real quickly here. This is something that's provided to us from MPAC, but we get those numbers from the Ministry of Natural Resources, and that's our lead governing ministry. So that MPAC data, what it does, it gives a levy apportionment for North Middlesex within our watershed of 11.5482%. And that number shows up, the MVCA there, it's about the third, fourth, sixth column in. And then that's how it's apportioned out based on that CVA. The slide 2, we can come, if there's any question, we can come back to this, but slide 2 now is the special benefiting levy. And I want to just, I'm going to hit really briefly on this because this shows the North Middlesex share for Parkhill Dam, the Nairn Cemetery, and the Stewart Gully. But I really want to focus on after this, those the assessments and the apportionment when it comes to the Parkhill Dam specifically. And I'll come back to that one in a little bit. So moving forward onto slides 3 and 4, that's a roll up of the entire budget for the proposed budget for 2025. And there's 2 in there. The reason why there's 2, the one on the left, the first one is actually the overall authority. And the one on the right is with drinking water source protection removed. It's a provincially mandated category 1 program as well. So that just gives an idea. Hopefully the numbers there, you have the numbers in front of you. If there's any questions, of course, we can come back to this after I get through just sort of the summary of everything. The slide 5 is these 2 charts here are really revenues versus expenses. And I think the really key thing here is to show that right now, proposing the levy really makes up about 30% of the revenue for the entire authority. It's one thing the authority is really good at doing is leveraging funds from partners and working with landowners, stewards, things like that to raise money for projects and programs. What we see here right now with what I would say is guaranteed funding from current partnership agreements, funding sources that are currently ongoing, we're looking at about a 2.5 to 1 leveraging ratio, which means for every dollar raised locally, $2.5 is coming into the watershed for these projects. The reality of it is, by the time we work through the year and more projects come on board or more funding comes through, that number is usually around a 4 to 1, sometimes even a 5 to 1. It's one of the abilities of a conservation authority is to leverage those dollars locally. Slide 6 then, this is the final one here. It's just a quick little summary that maybe has a couple of numbers that might be helpful. So as I mentioned, 2.72% is the overall levy increase proposed for North Middlesex this year. That's actually below the 3.93% average that we're seeing for the entire watershed. Similar to other years, we look at 3 of the last 4 years on there. You can actually, on slide 6, you can actually see that 3 of the last 4 years, North Middlesex has actually come out a little less than the overall budget increase for the authority. Yeah, there it is. Said another way, the levy per capita is in the range of really, depending on the numbers, the population numbers we look at for North Middlesex, anywhere between about $25 and $30 per person. Okay. So that's kind of the highlights of the budget, and we can go back through some of the sheets. We can do that now, or if you'd rather, I can kind of jump into the special benefit assessment on the Parkhill Dam and answer some of those Parkhill Dam questions. I'll take the direction from council.
All right, questions now? Sure, Councillor Keogh.
Thank you, Mayor Rupp. Yeah, I'll go back to that question about provincial funding being reduced. Any of these capital projects that you have that are, whether they be ongoing or whether they be in the future, are you looking to lean on the contributing municipalities heavier on this?
Yes, a lot of that's already happened. So just a little quick history here. The province up until the 1990s provided significant grant funding towards these projects. And it was during the 90s that the cutbacks at the time took those grants down from structures to 50%. In 2019, the new provincial government at the time cut those numbers in half again. So what that means is if we can do simple math, we think 50% divided by 2 is now 25%. But the reality of it is that funding has stayed static. The effective grant ratio really is more about 17% is what we're seeing from the province right now. So yes, the watershed and the municipalities on all these different structures and stuff have been picking up the slack from the province.
Follow up.
And is there any assistance at the federal level?
Not under the structures, flood and structure program. That's a provincial mandate. What I will say though, if there are repairs needed for any of these structures, the authority does apply to what's called the WECI program. And that's the Water and Erosion Control Infrastructure Program for 50% funding for the repairs and maintenance, for major maintenance on these. So there is still extra funds available. It's just year over year, we're getting the same dollar value for this, which we call the Section 39 MNR grant. But there is more funding available as projects do come up.
Other questions? At this time, Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Mayor. Devin, we're going to come back to the special benefiting after, correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
for sure.
So my first question for you is, and that is, I read an article the other day, and perhaps you can share with council the fact that the conservation fees have been frozen for the entire 2025 year?
Yeah, that is correct. And council may recall that the authority did send out a letter for support to the municipalities. We've got a number of letters of support to unfees the freeze. They say unfees the freeze? I mean, unfreeze the fees, the fee freeze. It's a mouthful. But the one thing that we were hoping is that the province might reconsider that. We've now since we've seen the notice from the province that it's frozen again until at least December of 2025. That doesn't mean we're not going to keep trying and pushing that message, because really what that means at the end of the day, if we can't increase our fees to keep up with development or keep up with the cost of doing business, we're falling that much further behind. And I think I can probably say we're all experiencing something similar to that. So yeah, it's a good question.
Other questions at this time? Seeing none, go ahead. Oh, sorry, Councillor Keel.
Actually, it's just one more, it's more for general interest. Looking at different things that we have in front of us by times, we see an increase of the parameter of hazard lands. To what benefit is that? I have had people that, whether they've applied for business or for building permits or anything like that, any zoning changes, it just seems as though the hazard land or anything to do with conservation has expanded its area. What benefit is that?
Well, it would depend on what protection or what regulation that was. For the CA regulations, the regulation limits have been established for a number of years. The only thing change that happened this year as of April 1st was the wetland limits. The area around wetlands actually reduced from 120 meters to 30 meters. So that was a big change, actually a reduction in the amount of land. Now there are I'm thinking of other environmentally sensitive areas that may be covered under different policies and planning act stuff that may be increasing. But as far as the regulations at the CA, ours have not increased for a number of years.
Any other questions at this time? Seeing none, go ahead, Deb.
Thank you. Okay. So the special benefit, I think before I get into, there's a few questions that came about the Parkdale Dam, and I think I'll answer those first, just as a little bit of background or kind of finish that conversation. There was a question about the diversion channel, and I'm linking that discussion to the question that was about the lands we're protecting, the Parkdale Dam downstream being that of Thetford Klondike Marsh area, which is Lambton Shores, South Huron, and North Middlesex. The one key thing I do want to point out with the Cameron Gillies diversion is that its primary intent and what it's been doing since its construction has been actually protecting the town of Parkhill directly by diverting that water away from the Cameron Gillies drain through town and taking those higher flows and moving them into the reservoir and managing, controlling the water through the reservoir operating plan. So I just wanted to point that out that it's a passive thing. We do have to maintain it. We have to make sure that the culverts and the controls are working. But that's even the last couple of big events. I know there was a big event here. I think it was May of 2019. And you probably recall that one. That's one first time in years we saw the Cameron Gillies drain actually function to carry that water away. And the estimates that we had at the time were about 50% reduction in flows through Park Hill itself, which is a large volume of water. Now the other one was the question about decommissioning. There was a question that come up about, could we do that? And Daniel's right. It's something we could theoretically do. We have to then think about what's downstream of that dam. As Daniel's graph showed, I think it was slide 8, and it showed the hydrograph of what the Parkhill Dam does without even operating it, how it cuts those peak flows. What it is, in fact, doing, said another way, is that all of that water from South Parkhill Creek is able to move in and through the Thetford Klondike Marsh area and hopefully slowly move out before the plug of water comes from the other part of Parkhill Creek, which is controlled by the dam, and it comes in. So what it's doing in effect is reducing water levels significantly by timing it properly. So you get the one plug of water through, get it through, and then have that second plug come through, rather than having those on top of each other and obviously having much more significant impacts because of the higher water levels. So I hope that answers that. Was there any other questions on the dam or the diversion channel?
Well, So I would ask, how, who decides how much each municipality pays on the dam and the water flow?
That is a great question. And I will get into that on the assessment if we guys, if we want to move on, I'll kind of show how
Yeah,
that, the
go
history of
ahead,
that.
Go
Yeah.
ahead. Yep.
You ready
Go
for that?
it.
Perfect. Okay.
Yep.
No, thank you. So yeah, as the one slide alludes to, and I'm not, you can go back to slide 2 if you want. It's a little bit confusing. I try to break it down a lot simpler. Slide 2. Yeah, it's the PDF. Yeah, so it's actually if you go up right there. Sorry, so down to one more down. Yeah, down there. Oh, again, hard to see. What it does is it shows the overall assessment to North Middlesex for the Park Hill Dam portion. What I want to just kind of step back and just look at the Park Hill Dam as a whole and how that assessment breaks down and with the history of why that assessment is the way it is. So for Park Hill Dam in the proposed 2020-25 budget, what we're looking at is a total cost to maintain and operate that dam of $75,598. That includes the $6,000 that we're looking at to put into reserves as part of the capital asset management plan. So we start with that number of about $75,000, and that MNR grant that I was talking about earlier, which we call the Section 39 grant, that's providing about $11,679 for that. Now, what I want to point out about that grant is that $11,679, unless something changes at the provincial level, that's the funding that we're going to get for Park Hill Dam next year as well, and possibly the year after. And hopefully it doesn't decrease from that. But that number was 22,000, almost 23,000 5 years ago. Right. So that reduction is a significant amount of money. How that share breaks down, and this is the kind of the current, I'm going to talk about the history in a second here. So North Middlesex share of that is $30,809. It's a 48.2% of the remaining. The Lambton Shores is $14,893, and that's 23.3%. South Huron is $2,237, and that's 3.5%. Then the overall authority, the watershed ABCA, pays 25%, which is $15,980. And that's all the municipalities in the watershed contribute towards the project as a watershed. A little bit of history on all the structures. The first agreement that I was able to find, and the one that I'm actually aware of where we looked at the actual assessments, were from 1988. They were signed in 1988. What I'll say, at the time, there was one from East Williams, West Williams, McGilvery, and Park Hill. And so those numbers combined were actually a little bit higher than the current apportionment for the special benefit to the Park Hill Dam. At the time, and again, not a huge amount, but was slightly higher than what we're seeing today. I can say this by just under 1%, North Middlesex's apportion has dropped since that. And why did that happen? In 2004, under the direction of the board, staff hired a third-party review, so a guy named Dr. Tony Smith. And in 2004, he went through the whole process, again, as a third party to come in and have a look to see if the assessments and apportionments were realistic, what we'd expect. And so what he came back with was actually North Middlesex's share dropped a little bit. And the reason North Middlesex's share dropped a bit was we look at all the reasons that the reservoir was put in place and what the benefits of the reservoir were. One of them was that the town of Park Hill wasn't actually realizing the water usage or the water supply. Because when it was first built, that was one of the features of the dam, that there'd be a water supply there if needed. And that never was realized. So that's why that dropped. So the numbers we're seeing today for North Middlesex are slightly less than the original 1988 agreements. And the numbers in Lambton Shores and South Huron have gone up just a slight amount to make up for that percentage. That's really kind of how the numbers are where they are now. I'll talk about WECI just real quick because we talked about the WECI program. If there were to be a project on the Park Hill Dam, because it's a flood control structure, the agreement is that the Assault Bay field pays. So if the WECI funding comes at 50%, the ABC watershed will pay 25% of that, and the 20% would be the Assault Bay field, and the rest would be on the special benefiting municipalities. In this case, North Middlesex would be one of them. Right. So because the WECI grants are available, the cost is significantly reduced overall. If it's an erosion control structure, which the Stewart Gully is and the Nairn Cemetery is, it's at 90%. Right, because those are solely within the municipality. So that's really all I had to say, just some of the history and how we got to the assessment values we have. If there's questions more specific or concerns or anything else you want to bring up, feel free to.
No, that answers my question
Then, okay.
very well, I think. Counselor Irwin.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. So just to clarify, the last review in terms of benefits was 2004.
That's correct. Yeah.
So the world has changed a lot in terms of 2000 in the last 20 plus years in terms of usage. Don't you think it's time for another review?
That's certainly a possibility and that can be done. My advice to that would be was North Middlesex would, if they wanted to make that recommendation, bring it to the board would have to agree to hire a consultant to go through and do this. And it can be done. The question at the end of the day will be, will it make a difference? Might go down. It may actually go up depending on what the values in society are. We don't know. And you say the values since 2005 probably have changed, but it's a possibility.
Well, it strikes me, if I may, Your Worship, just to follow up, it strikes me that if the dam benefits 1/3 of the watershed upstream, is it upstream or the watershed?
It controls 1/3 of the.
So it controls 1/3 of the,
Yep.
right? And then there's all the downstream benefits. It seems that there's an asymmetrical relationship here between cost and benefit.
Well, if you think of it purely as flood control, it may, you could tilt the scale a little bit. But if you look at it as recreation, one of the big things is the draw of recreation. Another purpose for the dam is low flow augmentation to the channel and the health ecosystem downstream. And then there's the one thing that was never realized, of course, we talk about the water supply. So that's why that dropped off, because it was never occurring. So I think we looked at the Thedford Klondike Marsh. I think we could all agree that the majority of it is in Bezanquit. Right. But there's other features in North Middlesex as well, as there are in South Huron. But the dam itself provides a lot of protection for Park Hill too. And that's one thing that's kind of silent in the operations, because that's taken care of through the Cameron Gillies diversion. And just having that in place has a significant flood reduction through Park Hill.
Okay, Counselor Keel.
Thank you, Mayor Rupp. I just want to back this up. Did I hear that correctly? That one of the benefits of the dam out here was for available drinking water?
It was water supply. If I look back at some of the original wording, that was one of the ideas. It could be drinking water, because in the report it talks about the Lake Huron supply negating that need.
That was before Walkerton, you realize.
Okay, because I was going to say, at what point is the water treatment
Yeah.
between that pond and my tap?
Yeah, it was never realized.
Okay.
Thankfully.
Any other questions at this time? Counselor Canellison.
Yeah, once again, I'll talk to you about this a little bit. I get a little bit of a better understanding about the special benefiting. The part where I still struggle is the watershed as a whole.
Yeah.
Okay, and I've talked about this at the board
Sure.
as well.
Yeah.
Okay, like when it comes to the lake shore, it's one watershed.
Right.
When it comes to the Park Hill Dam, it's not one watershed. How do we distinguish what's one watershed and what's not one watershed? Because to me, a lot of our levy goes to lakeshore protection. We don't have any lakeshore, but we have a creek in the dam. So help us understand that.
So and knowing where you're coming from with this one, if we look at, say, issues that are happening on the shoreline, I'm going to throw an example there, like legal matters, and the watershed pays for that. And I know we budget 60,000, it's been high the last few years. It's been high for sure. We are seeing some improvements in the legal fees, which is good. But we budget about $60,000 a year in legal fees. And so if you look at the apportionment value of 11.5 for North Middlesex, it's about $6,500 that you're paying towards that right there, that you no perceived benefit from. The challenge with that is bringing up at a watershed model is that there may be times where there are violations in North Middlesex too, so that number may not actually be completely in line. But if you do that, it opens up a discussion about absolutely everything that we do at the authority as far as the watershed model and what ABCA, what the watershed pays for and what's a real special benefit. 'Cause I think it really comes back to where, in this case, North Middlesex is a special benefit for 3 structures. All right, there's South Huron's benefit for a whole bunch. Huron East is, as is, where am I going with this? I have to show us North Middlesex, Huron East, and South Huron are the four that actually are special benefit municipalities. So yeah, if we, and we can have that discussion. If we do open up that discussion, though, we got to be prepared to look at absolutely everything at a real small scale. And I think the discussion I think it'd be contentious. But I think it'd be contentious because to the point, like we have to look at what the benefit is to everybody. And in this case here, the special benefit does go to those with the structures, flood control or erosion control. And that's how that's decided. It was decided through agreements many, many moons ago, but they're still in place and they've been in place now since 88, really. Yeah. Yeah. No, thanks, Adrian.
Any other questions? Councillor Irwin.
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to clarify one point here, if I may. So one of the special benefits you noted on the dam was recreation for our community.
Yep.
How is the economic cost of recreation decided? How is that ascertained?
That is a really good question. And I don't know what metrics the consultant put into that, but the fact that it's there, certainly to the community, is a benefit. How that relates to dollars and percentages in an apportionment for a special benefit, I don't know how they got the numbers, but it was certainly recognized that was initially upon the construction of the dam, and then also when this report was when it was reassessed again in 2004.
Councillor Canellis.
Recreation. It triggered a question for me.
Yeah.
And as you recall, a couple of years ago, there was an organization that came to the municipality and also to the Conservation Authority about establishing a water park at the dam
Right.
location here. And the Conservation Authority rejected it. I think it was a liability issue, I believe. But it was a recreation thing, similar to what they're doing in St. Mary's at the quarries there, I believe. Is the Conservation Authority prepared to look at that again?
Well, and I believe it was the Great Canadian Hideaway that was where that was proposed. Is that correct?
I can't recall, but I know it was a water park.
Yeah. I mean, we can certainly have the conversation again.
Okay.
I guess if there's an appetite for it, and again to the concerns about the water quality, is that something we want to promote?
No. Okay. Fair enough.
Any other questions? Anything you'd like to add, Dan?
Oh, that was great. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about the budget and take questions on the dam or the assessments.
So I do want to just end off in saying we do appreciate the work that the Conservation Authority does. We didn't talk about some of the work he's do looking at the health of our creeks and our waterways. And I know that you have other staff that would bring that forward, but do appreciate the work that you are doing. So.
Well, thank you. And anytime council has an interest in seeing a presentation, we're available to come and talk.
That sounds good. Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right. Thank
Perfect.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Yep.
All right. At this time, I would turn the,
Information I didn't.
oh, we need a motion to have this for information. Counselor Daigle, Counselor Irwin, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. At this time, I'll turn the meeting over to the Deputy Mayor. And it is.
Okay, we're, yep. Due to the mayor taking a conflict, we're now moving on to planning. Do we have Ashley on the line? Yes, we do, when I look. Okay, so this is to discuss the OPPA 15-319 in North Middlesex 2401 draft plan with Nairn Trail subdivision. And at this time, I will turn it over to the planner and she can make her comments.
Perfect. Thank you. Can you guys hear me okay? Yes. Okay. Perfect. I'm just going to share my screen. So the purpose of my report this evening is to provide an evaluation and recommendation to council for the Nairn Trails South Plan of Subdivision and the associated official plan amendment. The approval authority for both of these items lies with the county. However, local endorsement is required. The zoning bylaw amendment portion will come back before local council at a future date, as that is a local level approval. The subject lands are located in the southwest portion of the Nairn Community Settlement Area. So what that means is that they're already within the settlement area boundaries. They're approximately 52.58 acres in size, and they are currently vacant and contain agricultural lands and crop production and environmentally protected lands across the portion of the property that's adjacent to the Asable. Surrounding uses include existing low-density residential. As you'll notice, Hawthorne Crescent has never fully been built out as a crescent, so that's your existing low-density residential there. Agricultural lands and crop production, and environmentally protected lands. Draft plan approval of the subdivision is a conditional approval that outlines the proposed layout for the subdivision, and it imposes conditions that must be addressed, including but not limited to your detailed engineering design. This is arguably the biggest undertaking with your draft approval before entering into a subdivision agreement. Addressing, zoning, lotting, phasing, financial requirements, sidewalks, fencing, etc. And this is all to occur prior to the execution of a subdivision agreement. For this particular draft plan, we have 67 draft conditions that are attached to the council agenda this evening. So I will not read through them all for you. There's about 13 pages there. But the reality is that a lot of these draft conditions will be implemented through the subdivision agreement. So I'm just going to pull up the draft plan here. So a neighborhood public open house was held by the developer on May 8th, 2024, and a public meeting was held by the municipality on June 5th, 2024. As a result of the open house and the public meeting, revisions to the proposal were made, which is why it's been about 6 months since you've seen it come back before you for endorsement this evening. As a result of the open house and the public meeting, a comment matrix was prepared by the developer, and it was attached to council for the review prior to this meeting. And it outlines the comments that were made and how these have been addressed with the revisions, or how they will be addressed through either draft plan conditions or in the subdivision agreement. So the layout of the plan generally remains the same. However, I'll just point where my mouse is here. There was a couple blocks along Elma Street here that have since been reoriented along Street A and Street B. There has also been a few changes to just how the blocks are numbered. And as a result of inquiries about, providing additional housing types and some more attainable options for young families and even older citizens in the community, medium density has been included in a limited capacity. So I will say predominantly this subdivision does still remain single detached dwellings, but block 14 has been changed from a parkland block to medium density residential, again, because of the request for these additional housing types, but also because in consultation with the municipality and the director of community services, there is quite a large park space already available in Nairn, and there's trails proposed within the subdivision. So it was determined that extra land was not needed at this point in time. There's also the proposal that perhaps the cash in lieu of parkland could be utilized for upgrading the existing playground equipment at the Nairn Park for more accessible equipment. Sorry. I would just like to note, so the official plan amendment component, it's largely just updating the schedules of the official plan, as the property is already within the Nairn community settlement area boundary. But you'll notice in the official plan right now, there is a Nairn development concept plan with about 3 schedules that are affected by that. And of course, when this subdivision comes online, the concept plan is no longer going to be just a concept. And so we're really just amending those schedules to include these lands, and the portion that's not being developed at this point in time by the adjacent landowner, it will remain designated as that hamlet expansion area with the concept plans in place for that still. So staff have conducted a comprehensive review of the applications. We've consulted with the stakeholders, the agencies, council, and as noted, we've had a public open house and a public meeting. And we are of the opinion that the proposal before council this evening is consistent with the provincial planning statement and conforms to the relevant official plans. And staff are recommending that the draft plan of subdivision and official plan amendment applications be endorsed by North Middlesex Council, so they can then be forwarded to Middlesex County Council for review and approval. So I did provide a longer analysis in my report, but generally can be summarized with the following. So the developer is proposing a range and mix of housing types while maintaining compatibility with the existing abutting residential neighborhood. The proposed medium density townhomes will be located strategically on the interior of the subdivision so that new dwellings that abut existing residential are single detached. So what that means is block 2 here, we are asking that they remain as single detached. And when the zoning comes forward, we have already been in discussions that we would like some larger lot frontages just for some cohesiveness with the existing remainder of Hawthorne Crescent there. I would also like to note that even with the inclusion of some townhomes, the developer is not proposing to exceed the maximum permitted density currently in place in the North Middlesex official plan. It should be noted, though, that the current official plan does restrict development in this particular area to single detached dwellings only. In staff's opinion, this reflects a former era of planning policy that was established under previous guidelines, predating the current housing crisis and provincial direction. It would be a narrow policy interpretation that's not consistent with the current provincial policy to mandate that only single detached dwellings would be permitted. Cost-effective and efficient development that minimizes land consumption and continues existing and traditional street patterns and neighborhood structure is proposed. Additionally, the property is within walking distance to the existing elementary school and municipally owned parkland. The North Middlesex official plan is clear that wherever possible, new residences should be oriented towards streets or parks as shown with the proposed layout. And additionally, a trail system is proposed, as is cash in lieu of parkland, that is proposed to contribute to the future installation of accessible playground equipment at the existing municipal park adjacent to the subdivision. As council is aware, municipal services are the preferred form of servicing stemming from the province down. In this subdivision in particular, the lands will be connected to municipal services, and no development is proposed within the portion of the property identified as containing hazardous lands and natural heritage areas, which are refined through the completed environmental impact study. Delineation is also proposed, which will ensure that these features are protected in a greater capacity than they are. So the draft plan of subdivision will have 67 conditions attached to it that include but are not limited to matters such as servicing, financial requirements, road requirements, land dedication, parks, drainage, grading, landscaping, and sidewalks. Agency comments received that have not yet been addressed will be addressed with these conditions. And in keeping with the North Middlesex official plan, tree retention and the improvement and appearance of the streetscapes, civic spaces, and high quality parks will continue to be encouraged as the detailed design progresses. So staff are therefore of the opinion that the draft plan of subdivision and a proposed official plan amendment are consistent with the provincial planning statement and in conformity with the County of Middlesex and North Middlesex official plans, save and except for the schedules that are proposed to be updated. As noted, the zoning bylaw amendment will come back before council at a later date to address the draft condition, which is where you'll see the detailed lotting plan and will be provided a zoning matrix that shows you zoning conformity, lot frontages, that sort of thing. Further, future applications will be required to subdivide the blocks into lots. And if endorsed by North Middlesex Council, the endorsement's then forwarded to the approval authority for final approval. And we are recommending that it be endorsed and the resolution be forwarded. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I also believe that the owner and their consultant are available as well, should the deputy mayor wish to call on them.
Okay, thank you, Ashley. At this just a moment, I'd like to thank you, Vaughn, for sitting at the table tonight. As we move on, there are provision for council questions.
I'd like to pull myself, I should have disqualified myself from this. I just thought of something that should keep me out of this also.
Okay, we have another conflict is Councillor Dag. Councillor Nerder.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just have a question. Is there capacity? I don't know who I should be asking this to. Is there capacity for a project of this scale?
Well, I guess I'm the best one to answer that, ironically, the non-engineer in the room. So certainly we've been working with a developer on a number of things with this in mind. As you know, the William Street pumping station is on our radar for upgrades, and we've had various applications out for funding for that project. That will be necessary to service this site. We have had an evaluation of the Bear Creek pumping station that is between Elsa Craig and Nairn that may need some more minor upgrades to it, but certainly it is on our radar to upgrade the William Street for sure. And we've talked to the developer about potentially they're working with us with regards to Bear Creek. So answering the councillor's question, yes and no, we don't currently, but it certainly is our intention with the developments occurring both proposed for Nairn as well as in Elsa Craig to bring the capacity up. We've been looking at the infiltration into our system, and council may have been informed recently, we found a significant one actually right across the street from the campground in Nairn. And all of those things help to increase our capacity. So we're not quite there yet, but we're moving towards it. So a long answer to a short question.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, Councillor Irwin.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just for clarification, I'm not sure if it's the planner or the representative here who should be answering this, but so it's 140 to 211 potential low density lots, correct?
Sorry, through Deputy Mayor Hodgins. So it's a range of lots because it's technically classified as lotless blocks with the draft plan of subdivision. So the range, if I just pull up the draft plan here, it will be 156 to 253. This is a practice that is becoming more standard in the development world, not just in Middlesex County, but also in Wellington County to do these lotless blocks. But the zoning is ultimately going to dictate what number of units could potentially go there.
Question, go ahead.
Clarification and continuation. Thank you. All low density?
Sorry, through Deputy Mayor Hodgins. So as a result of the public meeting and the request for different attainable housing types, there will be some medium density housing included in the form of townhomes. So predominantly it will remain single detached residential dwellings. However, to just go forward with single detached dwellings under the current provincial policy, I would struggle to recommend that that meets their intent there.
I'm still seeking clarification. I'm just looking at the site draft plan here, and I can't identify where the medium or density or the townhomes will be, because it all states low density.
So
right there.
Whereabouts is that?
so this was
right in that corner.
Yeah, so originally this was proposed to be parkland dedication, but in
Right.
consultation with the municipality, there's an overabundance of parkland in Nairn at the moment. There's also a desire to have some type of senior townhomes and that sort of type of development. So medium density is proposed in this block now, which is not abutting any neighboring residential. And then block 13 is also proposed to remain low density, but provide for an inclusion of some medium density if desired. So the zoning is really what's going to be to narrow that down, but predominantly the subdivision will remain low density, primarily against the existing residential areas.
And I did ask those questions because we have an interest in building housing that's affordable. And certainly medium density would help us in that state. So having some medium density here is a benefit, I would say, to the community, right?
Yes.
Different question altogether. So at the public meeting, one of the issues that came up was access to the Asable River by the residents. And that's not a property owned by the subdivision. And there was some discussion around how that would be handled in terms of fencing, or would that land maybe be given to the Asable Bayfield or something of that nature. I don't know if those discussions have occurred or not, but that was certainly an issue that came up at the public meeting.
Yes, through Deputy Mayor Hodgins. So those discussions, I believe, have been ongoing, but there's more of something that will be addressed during the subdivision agreement stage and during the detailed design stage. So if you notice on page 9 and 8 and 9, sorry, the draft plan conditions, there is provision for fencing there. That's something that we need to consult with the Conservation Authority on too, on what would be acceptable for them. But that wording has certainly been included as a draft plan condition to delineate the natural areas from the remainder of the subdivision, which would include that portion along the Asable River that is privately owned.
Councillor Canils.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. My question is for Vaughn. And we had a discussion, I think, at the open house, and we talked a little bit about affordable housing, affordable units, and you weren't clear whether or not there would be any, and if so, how many there would be. Has there been any determination yet whether there will be any affordable units, and if so, how many? And what would be affordable?
Yes, The short answer to that question is no, we don't have a number. The longer answer and hopefully encouraging is that just internally within our organization of late, we have been talking about a number of projects that we have here in Nairn, in Elmira and St. Jacobs, plans that are in this same kind of timeline of the approvals process. And we've been asking ourselves as an organization, you know, what's the role we can play? What can we do in terms of making an impact in housing? So we are taking a look at that right now as to how we can bring something to the table, something not just you know, a vision and a statement, but actually a proposal to implement, you know, affordable units. We're working through, you know, what that partnership looks like. We know it will involve a financial contribution from us to make that happen. Are there other organizations or agencies to participate if it's rental, if somebody's operating it and so on? Is that something that's desired here? You know, it's different forms for different locations, perhaps. So it's something sort of philosophically we're actively working on ourselves right now. You know, there was a discussion before about capacity. You know, are we needing to front end, you know, infrastructure for sanitary capacity? What are we doing with respect to park investment and so on? All of these things need to be brought together for us. So this is an important step for us tonight to get, you know, moving forward at this juncture, but we have a lot of work ahead of us yet to work on those answers. But we are interested and engaged in doing that.
So if I heard you correctly, the short answer is that you are considering affordable housing. This is just a one step in a multi-step phase to get to that point.
That's right. Yeah.
Thank you.
And if I may continue, if I've got the floor, you know, part of introducing, you know, when the discussion was unfolding regarding, you know, less additional park space, more investment in the existing park, you know, we had that triangle of land to work with. We envisioned a bit of a, I'll say a seniors or a 55 plus enclave or something like that. You know, one of the demographics out there looking for affordable housing as well can be, you know, seniors, older persons and so on. So if that's a smaller footprint, smaller product, we're not a builder, we're a developer. So we need to gauge with local builders, you know, its price point and all of that the builder is looking to build to. But we feel we can build, you know, high quality and cost effectively, but there's going to be a range in a mix as well. If we're going to have 50 and 60 foot lots and trying to stay in some areas in keeping with the existing lot fabric, that's not going to be inexpensive housing either, right? So we're actively trying to think through how we can, you know, try and check off all these boxes, build more sustainable and green homes and all of those things, which again, add to cost, they don't take away. So some competing challenges put on us right now and, you know, put on all of us. And that's nothing new, I guess, but we're actively trying to think through the solutions.
Well, senior housing seems to be a booming market these days.
Yep.
Any further questions from council? Council Keel.
Just seeking clarification, is senior housing, is that 55 and older? Because you're not making this 56-year-old feel any better.
Yeah. And I'm older than you, sir. So yeah. 55 plus we call it these days. So
Okay, Councillor Irwin has.
Yeah, just to clarify, Deputy Mayor, there's a difference between housing that's affordable and affordable housing. So housing that's affordable, in my mind, is private sector. Affordable housing has some component of nonprofit or government. And I was asking for housing that's affordable.
Yeah.
And I think we're there, if that's what I'm hearing.
well, you know, we're trying to work on both parts of that. You know, the housing that meets the, I'll say, definitions of affordability, that definition is different in different municipalities. And I think when I was here before, I asked if someone could give me what those numbers are in North Middlesex. You know, in Kitchener, we're given numbers as, you know, a rental suite of, you know, a single bedroom has to be this price, a two bedroom has to be that price to be deemed affordable. And it's, you know, to make that mark, and if you're not the builder I mean, it requires a contractual, how are we gonna make that, get that delivered? So that we see as one activity versus, something that's more deeply affordable, I guess I'll say, where you're working with perhaps an agency that's providing an operating service or something.
And all due respect to seniors, and believe it or not, I am one, is affordability for young families is to me, top of the list,
Mhm.
especially we want to keep young people in our community and have a local workforce.
Understood, yeah.
Any further questions from council? I see, think about, no, but if there's any other added comments you'd like to make, this is a rather lengthy report, so I'll turn it.
Yeah,
over.
maybe if I could, I just did wanted to add, I was going to say, and I didn't give Charlotte, our planner, a chance to speak, but we have appreciated the collaboration with Ashley Sawyer with CAO Trip. We've had good discussions about trail connectivity, about park improvements. Brandon Drew here has been challenging us with inspirational ideas about accessible playgrounds and things like that. And this the CAO indicated lots of back and forth detailed discussions about capacity. We do feel, I believe, that there is some capacity there and available today. I know there's a report, I think a draft that's going to be coming to us shortly regarding the results of flow monitoring and so on. So, but it's been a very, this project, as some maybe around the horseshoe know, has been many years and many councils in the making. So it's feels to be a good achievement to be at this juncture, but we've got a little bit of work ahead of us to getting some homes under construction, but we're on a good path.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. At this time, we have a couple of motions here to look at. I'm going to actually do it in two motions. That the plan of subdivision application 3019 North NM 2401 and the associated draft plan of conditions be endorsed and the resolution be forwarded to the county of Middlesex for consideration and approval. Do I have a motion on that? Motion by Councillor Irwin, seconded by Councillor Nerda. All in favor? Passed. And the second one, and that the official plan amendment application OPA 15 be endorsed and the resolution be forwarded to the county of Middlesex for consideration and approval. Do I have a motion? Motion by Councillor Keogh. Seconded by Councillor Nerda. All in favor? Passed. Thank you.
Thank you.
And at this time, I will pass the chair back to the mayor.
Your worship, before we proceed, would it be okay if I made a quick comment about the process we just went through?
Okay, go ahead, Alan.
Thank you, worship, and through you, I just wanted to make a quick clarification of the proceedings that we just saw. Under the Conflict of Interest Act, members of council are allowed to stay around the horseshoe while the proceedings go. So Councillor Daigle declaring the conflict of interest before any discussion was in line with that act, and I just wanted to make sure that the public viewing were understanding of that.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you. We'll move on to our next item, and that is 6.2, the OPA 16 and zoning bylaw amendment, ZBA 23-2024 at 3610 West Corner Drive. And Ashley, oh, there you are. If you go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor Rob. So the purpose of my report this evening is to provide an evaluation and recommendation to council for the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment on the subject property. The approval authority for the official plan amendment lies with the county. However, local endorsement is required. The approval authority for the zoning bylaw amendment is the municipality. So the owner's proposal is fully detailed in my report, and it should be pretty fresh in your minds as the public meeting was just held on December 4th. But simply put, the owner is proposing to establish an on-farm diversified use that it's focused on promoting sustainable farm practices and local foods grown in the region that will supplement their existing farm operation. Short-term off-grid farm vacation suites with an attached greenhouse are proposed and will be powered by solar, have their own holding tank for water, and their own composting toilets. In the future, the owner may wish to offer yoga and massage services, as well as an agriculture-related on-farm store, where value-added products from the livestock raised on the farm can be processed and sold on site. However, one permanent detached additional residential unit is also proposed, and this is in line with the recent provincial changes implemented in the new provincial planning statement on October 20th of this year. So the official plan amendment really lays the basis and the foundation for the zoning, which gets into more specifics. But the official plan amendment will create a special agricultural policy area that will permit for a specially defined farm-related agritourism use, farm vacation rental, agriculture-related use, on-farm diversified use, and one permanent detached additional residential unit. It's the zoning bylaw that will specially define these uses, as well as including a special Schedule B that limits essentially all of the uses, save and except for a passive recreational use, to the portion of the lands that the ABCI identified as acceptable to them. So just the portion where my mouse is here. So this will permit for, if trails were to be implemented in the future and that sort of thing, we could go through just a site plan amendment as opposed to a full-blown official plan amendment and zoning amendment. This seems to be the path forward that would satisfy all parties. So the zoning will also include regulations that a minimum of one parking space per farm vacation rental be provided, that the on-farm diversified use shall not exceed 2% of the lot area up to a maximum of 1 hectare in land, and that the additional residential unit must be subordinate in scale, size, and function to the primary dwelling, must be within 100 feet of the existing dwelling, and it may be located with a minimum front yard setback of 15 meters from West Corner Drive. So just zoom in to this close up here, but the proposed detached dwelling unit would be located approximately here. So it's not going to take any agricultural lands out of crop production. So a public meeting was held on December 4th, in which no public comments were made and comments from the circulated agencies were provided. We've not received any formal comments since that date. And we did have an additional meeting with the Conservation Authority on December 9th, just for some clarification on their position. So as such, staff have included what I just mentioned as that Schedule B into the bylaw to ensure that any component that would require safe access for things like bunkies or the agriculture related commercial use and that sort of thing would be permitted in this non-regulated area. And then perhaps if a trail is wanted in the future, then it wouldn't be prohibited with the zoning, it would just be a site plan amendment. So staff note that the lands are located in a prime agricultural area. So this does permit for agriculture related uses and on-farm diversified uses, which stems from the provincial level down. On-farm diversified uses are looked at by the province as a tool to permit and enable farm operators to diversify and supplement their farm income, as well as to accommodate value-added and agritourism uses while protecting agricultural lands. So the proposal will build on the rural character and leverage rural amenities and assets while simultaneously diversifying the economic base by producing value-added products and producing sustainable tourism accommodations. These uses are not anticipated to hinder surrounding agricultural uses nor agricultural uses on the subject property, and they are not anticipated to generate noise, dust, or odor concerns. The subject lands do not comprise a specialty crop area, and based on the information provided by the owner's consultant, there does not appear to be livestock operations in the vicinity that would trigger minimum distance separation setback concerns. And as I noted, these types of uses are intended to enable farm operators to diversify and supplement their farm income. So staff are satisfied that the proposed use is directly related to an agricultural use on the subject lands and that it cannot reasonably be located within a settlement area boundary. It must be located in close proximity to this farming operation, as it will be focused on educating people on sustainable farm practices and whole foods in the region while producing value-added products that come directly from the farm operation. The use is also not proposed to require a large volume of water, nor generate a large volume of sanitary. And the farm vacation suites in particular will have their own composting toilets and potable water supplies. So the proposed use is located on a farm property that is actively in agricultural use. The on-farm diversified use will be secondary to the principal agricultural use, limited in size and scale, and buffering landscaping and the proposed layout and additional details will be reviewed during the site plan control stage. So I will just note we have received our first submission of that site plan control, which is in review. And, country properties are typically not as complex for a site plan review as when you would be looking at ones in town. So it shouldn't be an overly onerous process, but that site plan approval will ultimately rely on the official plan decision and the zoning decision. So the recommendation is that council receive this report for information, that the official plan amendment be endorsed and the resolution forwarded to the county for consideration of approval, and further that the associated bylaw be approved in principle and read a first and second time this evening. Once we know the result of the official plan amendment by county council, the bylaw would then come back before local council for a third and final reading. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ashley. Questions from council? Councillor Canellison.
Thank you, Mayor. Ashley, on the bottom of page 2, and you may have addressed this briefly in your presentation, you talk about additional residential unit, which is going to be for permanent accommodations of persons to persons, which may or may not include on-farm laborers. Is that then temporary use, or is that going to be allowed permanent use?
Through Mayor Ropp, thank you. So yes, so it would be on a permanent basis, which aligns with the recent provincial changes that have been made, which the hope going forward with the official plan review is that we'll no longer be requiring individuals to go through the temporary use process for these, of course, with parameters in place that, it has to be within a certain distance from the main dwelling, tie into the existing services, use the existing driveway and that sort of thing. But in this particular case, it would be permanent. And if the official plan or when it's updated, it should contemplate that as such as well.
So given that the county official plan, and we're looking at the sliding scale of severances for a building that's 10 years and older, as opposed to 1999, whatever it was, is there a possibility then that the existing dwelling that's there now could be severed off?
Through Mayor Ropp. So there's always that possibility that the existing dwelling that's there could be severed off. Now they would have to demonstrate farm consolidation, which essentially is another operator coming in and demonstrating that that particular house is surplus to their needs. Now the caveat that the province did throw in with the provincial planning statement is that these additional units cannot be severed off. Individuals save and accept a surplus farm dwelling severance where they go with the single detached dwelling. So you couldn't sever it off and leave that with the farmland and then have the dwelling on its own lot. The other note to consider is typically when a building permit's issued, it actually does classify it specifically as an additional residential unit as opposed to a single detached dwelling. So there is a couple mechanisms there in place for protection of that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing no other questions, Ashley has already read the recommended motions. What is your wish? Moved by Councillor Canellison, seconded by Councillor Nerda. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, Ashley. I know you're not feeling well. I appreciate you joining us tonight.
Yeah, thank you. I hope I didn't cough too much. Bye.
All right. Bye. So our next one is our department reports, and the first one is Joanne. You have 3, I think, or 4. So go ahead. And the first one is the petition for drainage works by owners, new municipal drain for Grace Farms. Go ahead.
Mayor and members of council, Mr. Grace has submitted a petition for drainage works by owners under Section 4 of the Drainage Act. He is requesting a new municipal drain on the northwest corner of Adair Drive and Brinsley Road. He requires an outlet for approximately 30 acres. Mr. Grace has requested Spreet Associates to engineer the project. He has an ongoing working relationship with them on other projects such as drainage and buildings. So the proposed motion and staff recommendation is that council receive the petition for drainage works by owners for a new municipal drain according to Section 4 of the Drainage Act, and that council appoint Spreet Associates, Limited as engineer to the project.
Questions from council on this? No questions? We have a recommendation in front of us. Moved by Deputy Mayor Hodgson, seconded by Councillor Keogh. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. All right, your next one is a request for branch drain major improvement, Section 78(1.1), the Scott Drain, Branch B.
Mayors and member of council, Mr. Grace has submitted a notice of request for drain major improvement under Section 78 of the Drainage Act. He has requested an improvement to the Scott Drain Branch B. Mr. Grace wants to fill in approximately 500 meters of open ditch along Mooresville Drive, between Brinsley Road and Cassidy Road. This will reduce the cost of brushing as maintenance. Mr. Grace has again requested Spreed Associates to engineer the project, as Spreed Associates wrote the previous report. The proposed motion and staff recommendation is that council receive the notice of request for drain major improvement on the Scott Drain Branch B, according to Section 78 of the Drainage Act, and that council appoints Spreed Associates Limited as engineer to the project.
Thanks. Any questions again from council? Councilor Canellison.
Thank you, Mayor. My question is actually for Brandon. Brandon, looking at the location of this drain here, right alongside Mooresville Road there, and if it's filled in, my concern is that the agricultural part of the land would be expanded close to the shoulders of the traveled portion of the road. Do we have anything in place to prevent that?
Through your worship, I'd have to look into it a bit more for information I can bring back if you want more information on that from the Public Works.
I would like that because I think on the west end of Adair Road, if you take it to not far from 81 Highway, you know, the land is farmed right up to the graveled part of the road, and I think it's a hazard. And I'm just wondering if that's the intent here, and I think that we should be careful what we approve.
Through your worship, yeah, that is something we will look at for sure, and that is an ongoing issue.
And your Councilor Keel.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. I think we already have a policy in place on that, or a bylaw in place that it can only be within so many feet of the road. And I'm sure that that's been done because I do remember it in the past 6 years of being here.
If we have it, it's not being enforced.
Well, that's an enforcement issue though. That's
Okay, so, okay, but I think you're right. There is a bylaw passing that. Yep, we can check on that for sure. We need to check on that for sure. Other questions on this? Seeing none, we have a recommendation in front of you. What's your wish? Councilor Keel, you're moving that? Seconder, Councilor Daigle, all in favor? Opposed? One opposed? That is carried. But it would be nice to get a report back on that from staff, all right? The next one is request for drain major improvement, section 78 1.1, the Watson Drainage Works from 1964. And once again,
Mayor and members of council, Mr. Grace has submitted a notice of request for drain major improvement under Section 78 of the Drainage Act for improvements to the Watson Drainage Works 1964. This drain's watershed is located between Brinsley Road and Creamery Road, south of Mooresville Drive and south of McGilvery Drive. The drain consists of a main drain and 3 branches. In the 1964 report, the open section is approximately 690 meters. The tile drains are 8-inch, 10-inch, and 12-inch. They're undersized for today's drainage coefficient. Again, Mr. Grace has requested Sprees Associates to engineer the project. So the proposed motion and the staff recommendation is that council receive the notice of request for drainage major improvement on the Watson Drainage Works 1964, according to Section 78 of the Drainage Act, and that council appoints Sprees Associates Limited as engineer to the project.
thank you once again. Any questions on this report? No questions on this one? We have a recommendation in front of us, moved by Deputy Mayor Hodgins, second by Councilor Nerda, all in favor. Carried, thank you. Your last one, municipal drain update.
Mayor and members of council, staff would like to inform council of the increase of requests for new construction drains and improvement to the existing municipal drains, which require engineers' reports. We currently have 17 requests. These will be constructed in 2025 or 2026, depending on the timing. We also have maintenance requests, which are a separate issue from above, and the maintenance are completed on a request basis. North Middlesex employs 1 full-time drainage superintendent and a drainage clerk who is shared amongst Public Works and Infrastructure. Staff is currently working on budget for next year, so this report is to inform council of the increase in municipal drain projects. The proposed motion and staff recommendation is that council receive this report for information.
Councilor Irwin.
Thank you, your worship. Through you, it seems that 2024 and 2025, the number of new drains or improvements have grown substantially. Are we foreseeing that growth continue in future?
Who wants to answer? I think the short answer is yes, we are.
Yeah, we are.
I think the short answer is yes, we are. You can see that the amount of drains that are coming before us, and there's a backlog waiting to get to them, correct? Go ahead.
Just for clarification, your worship, is it new drains or we also, because our existing drains are so old, when we look today from the sixties, is it more of replacing older drains that no longer meet the standard, or are we adding new drainage?
Through the mayor and members of council, it is both.
Final question for clarification, your worship. That was an easy answer. How much of this can we attribute to climate change?
Do you want to answer that?
All I was going to say is I would suggest that Joanne is not in the position probably to respond to that question, your worship. I don't know that we have the expertise on staff to be able to answer that, but I would suggest that the weather patterns and the changes that are occurring are definitely adding to it.
Okay.
We had gravel road issues the last couple of years that our previous manager of public works contributed in large measure to climate change. And I'm wondering if the drainage issue is as well, and all kidding aside, if drainage, roads, et cetera, and costs are accelerating for climate change, that's something we need to seriously consider.
Okay. Yep. Councillor Keo.
Can I just speak to half of that? Half of that is drainage upgrade, meaning that it's clay tile that only has a shelf life of 50 years. And oftentimes this is moving from clay tile deterioration to concrete municipal drains put in. And yes, there is an addition to plastic coming in because when you're there, that's when you do it.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions right now in this report? Seeing no other questions, we need someone to move the report for information. Councillor Daigle, Councillor Nerda, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. A report from Brandon McLeod and Manager of Public Works and the asphalt program for 2025.
Yes, through your worship. As request of last meeting, the deadline to let the county know is January 9th to join their tender. With that information, staff still recommends it remains the same on the recommendation for the asphalt program. Any questions?
Okay, thank you. Carolyn, do you want to speak to this a little bit to help out for some information?
Thank you. And through your worship, staff did, senior management did meet to discuss capital projects for 2025. This was just a preliminary discussion. I want to highlight that. But in meeting with staff, we did look at all of the capital projects only that each department was looking for 2025. I gave them, my direction to them was that we need to look at 2025 as what I would call a cleanup year. We have projects that have been started or not started that are on the books that we should be finishing up, that we should be looking at fiscally being very conservative this year. So those things in mind, staff did come back with projects that putting aside the pumping station, the William Street pumping station in Elsa Craig, for the moment, the projects came in around 9 million. Last year, our capital projects came into about 11 million. So actually it was, I would say 7.5 million, I would say for this year versus 11 last year. The William Street pumping station has been put out for a grant application through what I call, it's the acronym stands for something I can't think of, Housing Enabling Water Systems Fund. There, I got it. Which if we are successful, we would receive about 5.5 million and our contribution would be 2. So if you add that to our capital budget, at our cost only would put us still less than last year's. However, as a cash flow component does put us over last year while we cash flow it until we receive the grant. So what does that all mean? That means that our capital projects for next year, without William Street are lower, with it, as far as cash flow, are higher. My recommendation to council is to look at this program as, is this a priority for this council? Similar to what you might say for things of the gravel and the calcium nature. Is this something that you would do ahead of something else that might be on budget? Purchasing of a piece of equipment, for instance. So that's something to look at. But as far as will this cause an increase substantially to our budget, I would suggest at this point it would not. Our capital projects for next year, and keeping this in mind, would not exceed what we did last year as far as capital, and wouldn't cause us to put us into an increase situation over last year's budget. Assuming that our operating budget would be in line with last year with the similar cost increases for cost of living. Is that helpful? I'm
Just a minute, Adrian. I got Councillor Nerda and Councillor Daigle, then yourself.
I guess I'm just seeking some more clarification. Do we have the funds for this project? In simplest of terms.
that I'm going to turn to our treasurer.
Welcome to the hot seat. So your honor to the member. I would say no. For the simple fact that you had on the books in your last audited statements, 16.8 million in reserves and barely 11 million in cash. So your tradition here of funding your capital projects 100% from reserves has killed your cash balance over the last 2 years. So to say, are the funds there? No, they aren't in the bank. The reserves, they're still fairly healthy. We're not sure what they are exactly, but they are still healthy. So the question becomes, how much levy do you want to put into capital this year if you want to sustain the capital levels you've been doing for the last 3-4 years? Because in 2024, you only put in, I want to say 296,000 of new levy dollars into capital. The rest of it was all coming from grants or from your reserves. So when you hit your reserves for close to 11 million, it hurts. So it's going to take a while to get that sorted out and get back on firm ground. So I would say, no, you don't have the funds. You're also starting to get close to a point where you may not be able to go out and borrow it because you're getting close to your annual repayment limit that is tied to your revenue levels. So there are a number of aspects that all need to be sorted out before you can answer the question properly.
Thank you, Ralph.
Councillor Daigle.
I was going to ask the question on our rolling road if I'm saying that right, rehabilitation fund. We're using a lot of that for gravel. I don't think there's enough in there to fund this project. If not, I guess I'd have to say we don't do it this year.
Councillor Nelson.
Thank you. Brandon, how severe how challenging would it be to put it off for a year? Because I understand that we have to catch up and we haven't done it for a number of years, but could it last another year as it is?
Through your worship, I would say I would not recommend it, but we'd have to see. I wouldn't recommend to push it off, but on my end for it. Our asphalt roads are in bad shape because we haven't done it for so long and we're starting fresh on a lot of them. So this is what it's going to cost to redo them on a bunch of them.
Other questions? Councillor Teal.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. It's really not a question. It's just more of a comment. We certainly do like to see the efforts of staff bringing these savings toward, our expenditures. But when we don't have it, we just don't have it. That's my opinion. But, certainly the efforts and, the moving forward, if we can keep that type of insight up, we will take advantage of those situations when we can afford it.
Any other questions, comments? Deputy Mayor Hodgins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's just the same thing as Councilor Keel said. Yes, thanks, Brandon. It's always great to see a savings jumped on with the county. Can you stay in dialogue with them to upcoming years and know what their plans are? Probably they're not going to be in the area where we want them to be in, say, 26, but see if that's a possibility and that we could extend this, put it off a year, but if you knew what their planning was for another year, that we could jump on this again, it could help us.
Your worship, yeah, I will keep in contact with the county on their future projects and see if they will assist them joining them again on their tenders or any other process. But yes, I will keep that conversation going with them.
Councilor Irwin.
Thank you, your worship. A comment and maybe a question. So the road study is going out soon for 10-year or RFP, whatever. And then we do have a real issue with our asphalt and hard surface roads in our community, especially in some of our urban areas. They are really in bad shape. So although we talk about putting this off, I'm wondering if we can look at some capacity in future around this, but not too far down. Don't want to make a pun. Not too far in future. I was going to say not too far down the road. Not too far in future, because it is a big concern. I mean, there are some tremendous potholes in our road. There's a lot of spidering in our roads. Some of our roads are chewed right up because of trucks and other equipment on it that's just too heavy for the road. I mean, it's in terrible shape. So as much as we have a expenditure challenge at this particular moment in time, we're unsure what we can do. We really need to consider our hard surface roads because they're in terrible. Some of them, I should say, are in terrible shape.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? I would say just before we vote on this that it is a matter of prioritizing, as we know, and I would sure hate for us to buy a new truck and not pave a road. I mean, if we have to prioritize and because a new truck now is 450,000, and this is an opportunity. I really believe after seeing what's happened at Lucan and it's happening in Adelaide by partnering, I think Brandon's being very conservative with 10% savings. I think he really is. From what I'm hearing from others, I believe that's a very conservative number. But, we're going to do some capital, and I really do hate to buy a piece of equipment and let the road stay. And so to me, it's a priority over some of the other things. And we didn't talk about the dredging of the lagoons and the fact that we have that's $2 million that's on the capital, but hopefully we know better that isn't going to cost us $2 million. I mean, you did list that as $2 million on it. But if that $2 million is taken off, that's quite a difference to us as well. And I think council should really consider using this as a priority thing that we do. That's just my own thoughts. And so I'll leave that to council and Councilor Knudsen.
Well, you're echoing my thoughts exactly, Mayor Rob, if I may, and that is my question was going to be for the CEO or for someone here. Are there other capital projects such as equipment or trucks or something that we can put off and prioritize this program?
If we have to, correct? Yeah. Go ahead.
Through your worship, obviously the list that senior staff went through the other day has not come to council yet. And so at this point, it was just proposed. But yes, in that list included, if I may, Brandon, included a tandem for 450,000, included a new engine for the fire department, which may be necessary to be done this year, and that may be a priority, but that was 750,000. It included other things that maybe we could put off a year. I guess I'm somewhat in the same mindset that the savings from this may put it in a priority situation, similar to, as I mentioned before, like our gravel and other things, because of the savings we could realize through this and the priority that it holds. But that's a council decision.
Yeah, and I'm certainly, Ralph, I know what you're saying to us, like with the dollars and stuff, but we are going to spend some money on capital. It's a matter of where we're going to spend it. And I just think this is an opportunity that doesn't come around very often because they're right there. You know, they're paving right to it. Ralph, go ahead.
Just in response to your thoughts, as much as I have to give you the bad news of you can't afford to go out and buy everything you want, at the same time, I've got to advise you not to look a gift horse in the mouth, because the timing of some of these projects, as Brandon has explained it to me, are so optimal because we're just tagging on to the end of work the county's going to be doing anyway. So yes, his 10% is very light on reality.
Yeah.
I would suggest, given that January 9th is the cutoff date, that we maybe punt this to the 8th and sit down on the 8th and have the hard discussion that day of which are the real priorities and pick the pieces. And it may end up being that we don't do the full, $1 million on this. We only do 450 of it and we skip the tandem trunk. But we need to have some time to put together the rationale of which is the best place for us to put our money. And, maybe Santa Claus will be nice and we'll find some funding between now and the 8th where we can start applying to try and bridge getting our reserves back up to where they belong.
Okay, thank you. Carolyn.
And I really appreciate Ralph's comments, and I would normally totally agree to punt it down the road. Unfortunately, from what I understand from the county, that may or may not be possible, and I certainly we would let Brandon speak to that. But I think there are a number of items within what I would call at this point a wish list that we could defer. I think there are things that we have out there for grants, and there is another grant application that I'm going to be making that also could help with one of the major projects in capital. So I think you maybe need to think of this from the perspective of what priority would you put this if you had a list in front of you? How high would you have put it? And if you would put it near the top of the list, other things will fall off. If you would put a new tandem and other works in the community ahead of it, then we should delay this for a year. But I guess if the question is, my mind is how high of a priority is this? And if that's the case, then we will likely defer some other ones, but this could go ahead.
Councillor Nerda, and then Councillor Nelson.
Can we get a list of those projects prior to the next council meeting? Because I have a hard time.
I could definitely, I'm sorry, my apologies. I do have them roughly. Our treasurer did ask senior staff to provide him with Excel sheets of those. I will remind council, this is very rough. Some things have been fully costed, others haven't, but you can at least get an idea where we're coming from. And we can certainly send those out to you for your thoughts. Unfortunately, that doesn't answer the question tonight, but yes, we certainly could do that.
Just to follow up, would that give you enough time, Brandon, then to, after we review what projects are on the docket, would that give you enough time to respond to the county? I mean, that gives you a very, very tight turnaround time.
Your worship, so yeah, I have to let the county know first thing in the morning on the 9th we're already in the tender, because it was easier for him to do it now, but that he needs a day to take us out if it is.
So
And
in
he's tendering
fairness,
within next week after that.
in fairness to the county side of this, they're doing up a tender, and then if we don't join, they have to do up a different tender, different amounts. Councillor Canellis.
Yes, my question is for our CAO. You mentioned a fire truck at 700 some odd thousand. Is that the truck that we spec'd out for a build last year or earlier this year? That's going to be delivered in 2025 or 2026? When's it going to be delivered?
This new one, the others are here. Yes,
Yeah,
it's
the
the one
other-
we just spec'd out.
Yeah.
It won't be here in 25.
Is that the one? So the 750,000, is that for the one that was just spec'd out?
Yep.
Okay. So that can't be canceled. We have to go ahead with that.
I'm sorry, I would have to check with the chief on that because I thought this was another one, but
Well, yeah.
so I don't want to disagree with the mayor because I'm not certain, but I would have to check.
Yeah, I'd appreciate knowing that because that's critical to my decision, I can tell you, because, I think, I know that they go by the fire services underwriters, but I don't have a great deal of faith in that organization because it doesn't seem to apply specifically to the smaller municipalities. It seems to be more for the larger municipalities because a fire truck in our municipality isn't utilized the same as, say, one in Toronto or Kitchener.
Agreed.
It is the truck we just spec'd out. It is the truck we just spec'd out. The other trucks are changed. Councillor Keel.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. I think for all intents and purposes, it would just be easier if we had this list in front of us, and then we can make the best informed decision.
Agreed. So the treasurer and I will undertake to have that to you to be able to review before the next meeting. If not before the next agenda goes out, certainly with the next agenda.
Okay, Councillor Irwin.
Listening closely, your worship, just to clarify, we're absolutely sure that if we make a decision on the 8th and decide to go one way or the other, it'll work with the county on the 9th. We're absolutely sure of that.
To your worship, yes. Yep, because they're not going to tender to the week after the 9th. Send it out.
I think that's a great idea. Make as good an informed decision as we can. And as long as you have time for that, that's great. Anything else on it?
Thank you, council. I think that's
If
great.
not, I think we're looking for a motion to defer this for the next meeting, correct? Councillor Daigle, Councillor Nerda, in favor? Carried. Thank you. The next one is the gravel tender results. Brandon, that's you again?
Through your worship. So yeah, this report is the results of the gravel tender for 2025 that closed on November 29th, 2024. Staff is recommending to award the gravel tender to E&W Blaine Trucking for $837,500 excluding HST. I'm available for any questions now.
Questions on the gravel tender? No questions? Yep. Oh.
Brandon.
Councillor Canellis.
Brendan, I have a question. And I know gravel has to go on roads. I get that. We had a public meeting about that earlier this year. But my question is, do we still have to put as much gravel on Mooresville and Roboham and Pete Seaside roads that are basically just laneways for farm equipment?
Through your worship. So those lower volume roads, we usually put them on if have been done in say 3 to 5 years, just to give them some upkeep, but it's our more traveled roads, our busier roads on gravel that get it every year. So yeah, we do not do those smaller roads as much.
When we were advised to change our dust control to a different type of treatment or material because it was bonding the gravel better, are we not retaining that gravel on the roads better than we did historically?
Through your worship, I think we are. It is helping bind a lot better with doing it the proper way, adding water and calcium and all that stuff. It is helping make the gravel stay on the road better.
So why do we need so much gravel?
Your worship, to maintain on these higher gravel roads, we need the extra gravel for them because they're squished to make them wider than they need to be. So to maintain them and stay up with standards of large farm equipment, we do need add more gravel to those roads.
I got one final comment for you, and I already talked to you about this earlier this evening. As you know, whenever we gravel the roads, a lot of it gets pushed off into the ditches and we all get calls on it. Is there anything you can do about that?
Through your worship, all we can do is try our best not to push any gravel in the road or in the ditches. It's very hard to do when you get no more frost in the ground like we used to. And carrying our plows enough safely so they don't do that is very difficult, and it takes time to learn how to do that.
Thank you.
You know, Brandon, when you're here longer, it's just gonna say, yeah, pave them all. You know, that's, then it puts it back on us, right? Any other questions on the gravel tender? Counselor Keel?
Just one quick one. Oh, I read it here. It's already answered. Thank you.
Well, that was an easy one. Motion to accept the recommendation, moved by Deputy Mayor Hodgins. Is there a seconder? Counselor Canellison, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thanks, Brandon. The next one is a report from the CAO, and that is on the surplus land declaration.
Thank you, Worship. Came forward through the basic property owners and Dr. Daigle also brought it to our attention. My apologies, I'll start again. This matter came forward to us from the adjacent property owners as well as through Council Daigle of the priority of this matter. I put in my report the excerpt from the email from Don and Ruth Ann Cunningham with regards to these lands. So they were lands that became severed as a result of the re-straightening of Prince William Road. So the process to take it through the declaring a surplus and transferring the lands has to follow our process. And that's been previously established by bylaw by council. So in doing so, the first step that I asked the adjacent property owners to do if they were looking to purchase or acquire these lands is that we need a legal description of lands. So they have undertaken with a land surveyor to have a draft survey done of the lands. And I have attached that excerpt of that plan to my report. If that clearly identifies what this council is comfortable with the Cunninghams receiving as far as lands, then the next step would be for me to advise through the Cunninghams to their surveyor that survey correctly identifies the lands to be transferred. Also, this council would need to declare these lands surplus from the needs, the municipal needs of this municipality. And once that is done, we put a notification that the municipality intends to dispose of these lands. And there's a few ways under the policy to do so. And then it would be coming back to council in January to actually dispose of the lands to likely the adjacent property owner, but in the policy, it does give the right to other agencies like the Conservation Authority, that if they show interest in it, that they would have first rights. I am fairly certain, but I can never be completely certain that there will be interest. But at this point in time, I'm fairly certain there won't be any other interest. And so that would be coming back to the future council meeting. So at this point in time, as I've outlined, and I know that the process seems exceptional at times, but it is to declare the land surplus and allow them to go through the process of posting and posting the lands for disposition from municipal assets.
Councilor Daigle?
Just a question on part 1 and 2, the way it's split down the middle like that. Is this what the Cunninghams have put forward? Because in their description with me, they wanted to cut the other way.
That is the way they have brought it forward to me. So that's why I asked them to bring forward what they would like to see from their surveyor for that exact reason.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Hodgins?
Okay, yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've read through this 2 or 3 times, trying to understand it. I totally agree with the surplus, it being, you go back to the original farmland. Part 1 and part 2, and it sounds like they want part 1 to maybe go to the north, part 2 or go to the south part. I guess number 1, we all try around here different times to preserve farmland at different surpluses that we have done. And I would like to see part 2 and part 1 go together and go to the north as one piece. And keep the other little triangle at a smaller piece. That is my thoughts. I won't argue it to the end of the earth, but I'm just making a comment that I would like to see part 2 and part 1 go together. Still say in their name, but go that way and makes the other one a smaller lot. Thank you.
Dear your worship, to the deputy mayor, that is council's right to dispose of how you wish. Other than following our policy, you can choose to, once we go through the advertising process, you can choose to transfer the lands to whomever you wish. Quite frankly, you can transfer all of part 1 and part 2 to the Cunninghams if you choose.
Yeah, so it could go either way. The part 1, part 2 could go to the north, or part 1 or half as they have it. Because I can't anticipate, and I don't want to anticipate that they may look at a smaller lot there could be severed off, and I understand their thinking behind that is a lot for a building lot. But do they need that whole big piece of property? I mean, it's not really up to, but I'm just making the comment. We'd like to try to preserve, and it is all farmland right now. It's all workable land with this invisible road going through the middle of it. I'd like to see it personally. I'm one of the ones to like to see it stay in farmland. Thank you.
If I may, your worship, that really is a decision for next meeting, when we actually make the decision about the disposition of the lands.
Okay, Councillor Nelson.
Yes, Mike, I have a very simple question. Does this road allowance have any value?
That would be determined by this council. Certainly, lands always have some value because of the past experience with this property. It was proposed that be transferred basically for $1. However, council can, and that can dispose of the lands for what they choose to be appropriate. In a lot of cases, councils choose to do it at market value. So that's another option. If council chose to do that, we could certainly have the lands appraised or an opinion of value obtained, and they could be disposed of at that rate if the parties are still interested.
Well, it's just in reading the paragraph that they submitted in your presentation here, they intend to sell it. That's how I'm reading it. They intend to sell it. So clearly it has some value, and I don't see why the ratepayer shouldn't benefit from that value.
Okay. Councillor Daigle.
I think I'll leave my questions till this comes back up again the next
Okay.
time as how
All
it
right.
can be sold.
All right, so is there anything else on this report tonight? Seeing nothing, we have a recommendation in front of us. Moved by Councillor Daigle, second by Councillor Nerda. All in favor? Oh. No, that wouldn't be done tonight, correct?
That is not done tonight. Council can choose to dispose of it for a market value at the time or at any rate they choose to at the time. It's your property. You can sell it for what you like.
Okay, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Our next one is a report from Brandon Drew, and that's on economic development, community services on the utility billing.
So Mayor Rob, members of council, as you may recall, we did switch our hydro and gas over to bulk purchasing this year around May. What we've seen from our facility is about 10% savings through the year so far, and that's with a missing 5 months of billing. Staff are suggesting that to benefit some of our leaseholders, we take on their hydro and gas as well into the bulk rate. And then when we get the bill for those facilities, just bill it back to them. It's a way that they'll be able to benefit from us grouping everything together. They'll still be paying their usage the same way they are now. They'll just be getting it at the preferred rate that we get it.
Okay. Thank you. Questions?
Yes, recognizing the staff are overworked and underpaid and we're constantly hiring people, do we have the staff capacity and time to do this billing?
You know, what was your question in there?
My question is, does staff have the time to do this?
I'll defer that to my treasurer since it is their department, but it is 3 bills. It would be 3 bills a month.
Your worship to the member. I wasn't aware of the idea and concept, so I haven't had a chance to talk to my staff as to how much work it really will be for them. But my knee-jerk reaction to it is, if these are people we're already issuing a lease invoice to, I would suggest that we just add a flat utility amount to their lease based on the prior year's actual, and we not worry about trying to track the specific usage every month. And then it's just simply the same work we're doing now. We're just including the utility portion in it. And then once a year, whether it's Brandon's staff or mine, they can go through and do a reconciliation of what was the actual utilities versus what was processed through on the monthly bills and make the adjustment for the following year's lease.
Well, that answers my question. I appreciate your answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions on this? Anything you want to add, Brandon? No, we need, Counselor.
Prepared to make the motion if you're prepared, your worship.
Okay. To accept this as information.
Yes.
Okay, moved by Counselor Irwin, second by Counselor Nerda, all in favor? Carried. Okay, the next one is Felicia, you have one on the CIP program.
You were.
Want a different motion? Go ahead, Brandon.
Can I just skip back there? The proposed motions on that last report were that council directs staff to add the hydro and gas billing from the Old Town Hall, Carnegie Library, and the Parkhill Leisure Club to the municipalities' accounts, and that the council directs staff to bill the hydro and gas costs back to the groups operating the leased facilities. Those.
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify the motion.
Okay, we'll make a motion for that. Do you move that? That is moved by Counselor Canales and second by Counselor Irwin. All in favor? Carried. All right, Felicia, go ahead.
Thank you, your worship. Mayor and members of council, my first report is regarding the Middlesex County CIP implementation program. I just wanted to give council a brief update about this program. So to date, council has approved $16,956.48 to our 2024 CIP. And Middlesex County has stated that $5,846.76 will be reimbursed once each project has been completed in 2025. This allows for approximately 1 to 2 more CIP applications for 2024. Thank you, your worship. My second report here is on the completed 2024 CIP applications. One is from 2023, that is the Dollar Haven facade upgrades, their new signage up front, as well as Carrie's hair design. She was able to complete her new flower boxes this year with the CIP program. And the pictures were attached on my report. Thank you, your worship. Mayor, members of council, the report in front of you is regarding 273 Main Street, Park Hill CIP application for the accessibility program. They plan to increase their parking from 1 to 4 spaces, giving better access to the building for people entering It is my recommendation that council grant $4,987.50 to 273 Park Hill Main Street for construction costs as per the municipality's improvement plan, accessibility program.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Felicia, what business is 273 Park Hill Main Street?
It is, so it's the yellow brick house beside Foodland. And the owners are running their real estate brokerage out of it on the main
So
floor.
this is just for clarification, this is not a resident, this is a business who submitted this application.
It's zoned C14. So they do have plans to make the upstairs residential and continue the main level to be their business.
Thanks, Felicia.
Okay, any other questions on it? We have a recommendation in front of us. Moved by Counselor Nerda, seconded by Counselor Daigle. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Yeah, one more.
Last one, thank you, Your Worship. Mayor and members of council. The report in front of you is regarding 273 Main Street, their CIP application for the beautification program. They plan to add 4 new signs to the building, as well as elevate the curb appeal and functionality of the front of the building. And it is my recommendation that council award 273 Park Hill Main Street with $3,478.50 upon their completion of the project.
Questions? No questions? Moved by Deputy Mayor Hodgins, sorry, seconded by Counselor Nerda. All in favor? Carried. Committee reports. Is there any committees that wish to report at this time? Go ahead, Counselor Nerda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On December 12th, the Economic Development Committee met and had a great meeting. We introduced Brandon Drew to the committee as our Economic Development Coordinator. We had good discussions about revamping and improving our CIP program, and we will be bringing 2 motions before council at our January 8th meeting. And we're also looking for new members to join our committee. So if anyone knows anyone who's interested, contact myself or Felicia.
Okay, thank you. Any other committees wishing to report? Counselor Nelson?
Actually, Mayor Rob, I just have a comment that I'd like to direct to our deputy mayor who sits on the Middlesex County OBP Detachment Board. And that is that I would ask the deputy mayor to inquire about the enforcement and of school buses being stopped on our busy highways where children are embarking on the bus or unloading from the bus. There was a little boy killed in Delaware recently getting off the bus. And I think the OPP should be encouraged to utilize a proactive approach and patrol these heavily traveled thoroughfares at school time. Would you do that for us, Mayor, Deputy Mayor?
I'd be honored to do that, Counselor.
Thank you. Any other committees at this time? Just before I go to correspondence, I feel I want to say to council to remind everyone to, by all means, let's ask questions, but let's be respectful to each other here as we do this. All right. All right. Correspondence. We have home hardware request to sell firearms. Who's speaking to that? Anyone? Alan? Sure.
Your Worship, there was a letter received from the Home Hardware in Elsa Craig requesting the ability to sell firearms. The request is a part of the process in getting their provincial designation. The municipality, as long as they have a zoning approval, which is our commercial, and they're not violating any bylaws, which I don't perceive them to be, does recommend that we endorse this letter.
Okay. Any questions on that? Counselor Irwin?
Your Worship, when we're ready to move it, I'm prepared to make the motion.
Okay. Is there any questions? It's different than when they used to just sell the shells right on the shelf. They just pull them off the shelf and give them to us. But okay, no questions. Counselor Irwin, you were moving that recommendation or that motion? Seconded by Deputy Mayor Hodgins. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. The other correspondence is the Township of Baldwin, transportation and disposition of naturally occurring radioactive material, or NORM, and mine tailings. Receive and file.
I'd like to support that. I hope everybody had a chance to read it.
You make a motion to support it?
I do,
Or is
yes.
there a seconder? Counselor Canellison, in favor of that. Carried. Other and urgent business. I think we have one in front of us, Councilor Nerda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This question is for Brandon. I've had a couple ratepayers ask
Which
me.
one? Which Brandon?
Brandon Drew.
Okay.
You're off the hook, Mr. McLeod. Mr. Drew, I've had a couple ratepayers who have booked facilities in February, March, and August of next year for some hall rentals in Park Hill. What, can you give me an update of the status of the potential of the renovations that are happening? Are they starting in January 2025, or can they be deferred to fall of 2025?
Through the mayor to the councillor, staff will be bringing a report early January outlining our timelines. At this point, I will be reaching out to our January, February renters saying that they should be good to move forward, as I don't anticipate our construction window will hit that timeline.
And our March renters?
I would suspect I will have something to them early January to let them know.
Thank you, Brandon.
Any other business, anyone? We do have everyone's seen it. Oh, that's separate, isn't it? 10.1. I'm sorry. Any other business? Seeing none. The next item is 10.1, a Sauble Bluffs subdivision agreement. Is there any questions on that? Or do you want to speak to that no? Any questions? Councilor Irwin.
Your worship, given that this is in the agreement, are we going to be signing the roads going into the subdivision, letting travelers know that it's unassumed roads and the responsibility and liability of the developer and not the municipality?
That should be a requirement of the subdivision agreement as well, so I will ensure that that gets done.
Okay, Councilor Daigle.
Thank you, Your Honor. When I look at this, it doesn't say the municipality has to do this. We could hire somebody to do this because we're busy enough on the roads we have. Like, we could hire a contractor to go be on call to do this job and the bills are generated. It takes that work away from our staff. And they take care of our roads that are in service now.
Okay. Councilor Nelson, yeah.
I guess I just have a question, and I thought that we discussed this earlier in the year at council here as to whether or not we're going to take on the responsibility of plowing the snow on the roads, and we determined that we would not. And I just want to know how that changed and who made that decision.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. It was last year, prior to any houses being occupied in the subdivision. Everything was still very much under construction. It was actually Mr. Hodgins and myself that brought that forward to council as a recommendation at the time. But since that time, we have occupants in the subdivision, and it is certainly in the municipality's best interest as far as liability and otherwise to ensure that emergency services can gain access. So in speaking with our solicitor and with the request of the developer the works be done, I made the decision that the works be done, that they be charged in accordance with the subdivision agreement as the situation had changed from last year.
I appreciate that. And so you said charged, so I'm assuming there'd be a fee. And do we know what that fee will be?
I have asked our Public Works Department to keep track of the number of times and time it takes to clean the roads and that. It's no sidewalk work. It is a pass of the snowplow so that emergency services and the residents can gain access and outside. Once that is provided to me, we do have rates like the MTO rates and other rates that we can certainly utilize in determining what those costs should be. They are not outlined in the subdivision agreement, but certainly in billing out and other things, we do use MTO rates. So that's what I would likely turn to determine a cost recovery for those services.
I have one final question and then I'll pass it on. And any damage is done to our equipment, i.e. flat tires or a blade that's broken that because it hits a raised manhole cover, anything of that sort, who will be responsible to repair that and the cost of it?
We have not assumed the road, so any liability causing us damage would be at the insurance of the developer. Any damage we do to the road, again, is their responsibility.
And that's all in the agreement.
That is what I've actually gone further to do on this because I've certainly experienced some concern with this. I've followed up with our solicitor and the developer is signing a letter for me outlining exactly that.
Thank you.
Okay, Brandon, don't mean to put you in the spot, but to Councillor Daigle's comment about, I'd like to hear what you think about whether our guys can carry on doing it or whether we should look at hiring an outside contractor.
Through your worship, I've made that subdivision last priority and also ready to be done. So every other street that we own is done first, sidewalks are done first, then we head there to push the snow and clean it. So we can do it. It just won't be top priority until we get our roads done first.
Okay. Councillor Daigle, a follow-up?
I'm just not sure legally where you're gonna land on that. When you say it's not gonna be top priority.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good question to have, actually. It is an unassumed road, but what's the,
Certainly as long as it's being plowed during the same time frame. I mean, when I say it's still going to be done in the same day as our other streets, I think that we certainly don't have a level of service for that road at this point in time.
okay, thank you. Brandon?
Just to clarify, I would treat it still as like a minimum standards to follow what we need to follow legislation wise to maintain it. So we have a certain amount of time to clean it. And I know we can do it within that time.
Okay. Okay. Anything else on that? Go ahead. Carol.
Just if I can remind council, it won't be that long before we will be maintaining that road. So it's just a reminder that that will come on stream within the next year or two anyway.
Okay, anything else on that? Seeing nothing else, communications, including county council. The highlights I think of it are in front of you. Any questions on it? I think there's two items, isn't there? But Municipal Accountability Act, 2024, Municipal Code of Conduct and Integrity Commissioner. Seen that in front of you? Any questions on any of it? Seeing none, reading of the bylaws.
Thank you, your worship. That bylaw is 94 of 2024, 95 of 2024, 96 of 2024, 97 of 2024, and 98 of 2024 be read first and second time.
Councillor Nerda, Councillor Daigle, all in favor? Carried.
Okay, thank you, your worship. That bylaw is 81 of 2024, 82 of 2024, 94 of 2024, 95 of 2024, 96 of 2024, and 98 of 2024 be read third and final time.
Deputy Mayor Hodgins, Councillor Irwin, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. We're going closed. So at this time, I'm looking for a motion to go into closed for the minutes and for labor relations or employee negotiations. And K, a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiation carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board. And Alan's favorite, H, information explicitly supplied in confidence to the municipality or local board by Canada, a province or a territory or ground agency of any of them. You got that? Moved by Councillor Nerda, seconded by Councillor Keogh, all in favor. Carried. Thank you. We will go into closed session.